Seja bem-vindo a mais uma edição do programa Todas as Palavras, desta vez em Londres, na Burke House, para uma entrevista muito especial. Sapiens é até hoje um dos livros mais vendidos no mundo inteiro. Yuval Noah Harari regressa agora com Nexus, história breve das redes de informação. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, it's good to be here.
Right at the beginning of the book, you write, imagine that in the 21st century, the whole world became a hostage of a totalitarian regime. It's not to exclude the hypothesis that the dictator could be a non-human intelligence. Can you explain? We are in a turning point, right?
Yeah, we are in a turning point because for the first time in history, we have created a technology that might escape our control, because this technology is not a tool in our hands, it is an agent. An agent that can make independent decisions and can invent new ideas by itself. Every previous technology, from the printing press to the atom bomb, it was a tool that empowered us. A printing press cannot decide which books to print. Humans decide. A printing press cannot write new books. All the books come from our mind. Also, an atom bomb cannot decide which city to bomb and cannot invent a new powerful weapon. But AI can do these things. Autonomous weapon systems, an AI weapon, can decide by itself who to attack, who to bomb. And AI can already write texts, create music, create images, and entire videos just by AI. They are still not as intelligent as us, of course. Their intelligence is quite narrow, and even in many fields they are far less capable than us. But this is just the very beginning of the AI revolution. We haven't seen anything yet. AI will continue to develop for years, decades, maybe for thousands of years, and could potentially become far more intelligent and capable than us, and then it could escape our control and enslave or even annihilate us. Maybe I give just one short story.
Yes.
To kind of demonstrate how these AIs are different from previous technologies. When 2 years ago, OpenAI developed GPT-4, they wanted to test what can this technology do. So they gave it the task, the goal of solving CAPTCHA puzzles. CAPTCHA puzzles are these visual puzzles that sometimes when you access a web page or your bank and the bank wants to know if you're a human or a bot, you have to identify some visual puzzle like a string of twisted letters. And it's designed in a way which is easy for humans but difficult for bots, for computers. Now, GPT-4 could not solve the CAPTCHA puzzle, but the researchers gave it access to the TaskRabbit website, where you can hire people to do things for you. So GPT-4 tried to hire a human worker to solve the CAPTCHA puzzle for it. Now the human got suspicious. He asked GPT-4, why do you need somebody to help you with a CAPTCHA puzzle? Are you a robot? Are you a robot? And GPT-4 answered, no, I'm not a robot. I have a vision impairment, which makes it difficult for me to see the CAPTCHA, so I need your help. And the human was fooled and solved the CAPTCHA puzzle for GPT-4. Now, this small story shows us two very, very important things. First, the ability of AI to make independent decisions. Nobody told GPT-4 to lie to the human. They gave it a goal, solve the CAPTCHA puzzle. They didn't tell it to lie. It made an independent decision to lie to the human when the human asked, are you a robot? The second thing, it demonstrates the ability of AI to invent, create new things. Nobody told GPT-4 what kind of lie would be most effective. It invented the lie by itself. You know, from all the things it could have said to the human, this was a very, very effective lie, and it was invented by the AI. Now, this is something very, very small, but this is going to happen on a big scale in finance, in politics, in the military, in more and more places. AIs will make decisions about us and will change the world by inventing new things.
Inventing new things and new narratives.
Yeah.
Because this whole book is also about the importance of narrative for humans, especially for the Homo sapiens, and why our species thrive. Can you explain that?
Yeah, humans are storytelling animals. We control the world because of our ability to tell stories. Why are stories so important?
Yeah.
Because this is what connects us together. On an individual level, a human is not more powerful than a chimpanzee or an elephant or a lion. What really makes us powerful is that 1 million people can cooperate on a big project. 1 million chimpanzees can't. What makes it possible for us to cooperate? It's not personal acquaintance. I know maybe 100 people, maybe 500 people top, if you count all my family and friends of friends. Like, I don't know you personally. Nevertheless, we are now together creating this TV show. What makes it possible for humans to cooperate with strangers, with large numbers of strangers? Stories. It could be religious stories about some god. It could be national stories, our national mythology. It could be economic stories, like money. You know, even money is just a story. Money has no objective value. If you think about $1 or a Bitcoin, you can't eat Bitcoins. You can't drink Bitcoins. Their value comes from the stories people tell about them. We just saw how the election of Trump to US president led to a huge jump in the value of Bitcoin. It's now like $70,000 or $80,000 for one Bitcoin. Why? Why should the election of Trump lead to a rise in the value of Bitcoin? Because of the story. That you see that people constantly tell stories in order to convince other people that this thing has value. And it works. This is the basis for all our economic system. The stories that we tell about currencies, about the stock exchange, about companies, and every company that wants to raise money to gain investments, it tells a story. Like people in the investment world, they know that ultimately to have investors, you need to tell a successful story. It's not enough that you have good engineers or you have good technology. And now, for the first time in history, there is something that can tell a story and is not a human being.
Exactly.
Again, every previous technology, a printing press could not tell stories. A television set cannot tell stories. A television set can broadcast the stories that we invent. But no story was ever invented by a television. AI is already inventing new stories. It might one day invent new currencies, much more complex than Bitcoin. It might even invent entire new political ideologies, entire new religions.
Just an example of the power of stories. Also in this book, you say that, for example, Bialik's poems can be in the center of the beginning of this conflict between Israelis and Palestinians.
Yeah.
Well, it's a kind of amazing as how a story, how what we write can motivate something like this.
Yeah, every nation starts with stories. It's not a land. It's not even, something in our DNA. It's not the DNA that decides whether you belong to Portugal or Spain or to Israel or to Iran. It's the stories in your mind. It's the stories you believe about the past, about God, about whatever. So to create a nation, like to create a religion, people tell stories. It's not just texts, it's also images. If you think, what is the most famous face in the world? What is the most common portrait in history? So it's the portrait of Jesus. Over 2,000 years, billions and billions of images and portraits of Jesus were created, and they are everywhere, in churches, cathedrals, private houses, hospitals, many places. Now, the amazing thing about all these portraits is that they are all fictional. We do not have even a single authentic portrait of Jesus. No portrait has survived from his own lifetime, and the Bible doesn't even tell us how he looked like. Like, if you read the Bible carefully, there is not a single word in the Bible whether Jesus was tall or short, whether he was thin or fat, whether he had black hair or blonde hair, or maybe he was bald, nothing. All the billions of portraits of Jesus, they are just fictional images that humans imagined centuries, thousands of years after he lived. And yet they were extremely effective in creating connections between people, in inspiring people. Could be inspiring people to do good things, like give charity and build hospitals and so forth. Could be bad things, like go on crusades or start the Inquisition and torture and kill people because they don't believe in the right story. But this is the power of stories.
Well, it looks like you are talking, for example, about social media.
Yeah.
What you said right now, we can apply to social media. And how would we prevent that something like what happened to the Rohingya people in Bangladesh? How would we, in Myanmar? I'm sorry. Yeah. How would we prevent this kind of events right now? Because the Rohingya massacre was motivated by Facebook.
By propaganda and fake news
Facebook.
that spread on Facebook, yes. What we need to understand is that information is not truth. And simply creating more effective ways to spread information doesn't mean that we will get more truth. Because the truth is actually a very small subset of all the information in the world. The truth has several problems. The truth is costly. It takes time, money, effort to produce a truthful account of history or biology or anything. Fiction is very cheap. You just write anything you want. To create fake news or a conspiracy theory, very cheap. The truth tends to be complicated because reality is complicated. Fiction can be made as simple as you would like it to be. And the truth, finally, is often painful. There are things we don't want to know about ourselves, about our nation, about the world. Fiction can be made as flattering and pleasant as you would like it to be. So in a competition between the costly and complicated and painful truth and the cheap and simple and flattering fiction, fiction tends to win, unless we make the effort to build institutions that give preference to the truth, like in science. Now, in social media, we don't have it. In old media, like over the centuries, newspapers and radio stations and television, they developed mechanisms to fact-check and to make sure that, to the best of their ability, they are not spreading fake news and conspiracy theories. But social media lacks these mechanisms so far. Partly because the companies refuse to take responsibility. They say, no,
and we are talking about private companies.
Yes, private company. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, they are now the most important information platforms in the world. And they have this kind of very ingenious argument. We believe in free speech. We don't want to prevent any kind of information from being spread. Now, this is, of course, a trick, because the problem is not the free speech of humans. The problem is the decisions of algorithms. Every day, humans produce enormous amounts of content on social media. Funny cat videos, and biology lessons, and conspiracy theories, all kinds of things. I don't think that companies should censor what humans produce. That's not the problem. The problem is that the algorithms of the companies, then from all the content that humans produce, they deliberately spread content which causes hatred and fear and greed. Why? Because this is good for their business. The main goal of the platforms and of the algorithms is to make people spend more time on the platform. The more time you spend on the platform, the more money they make. Now, how do you make people spend more time on the platform? The algorithms, the AIs that manage the platforms, they experimented on millions, on billions of human beings, and they discovered that the easiest way to grab your attention, to keep you on the platform, is to press the hate button, or the fear button, or the greed button in your mind. Because we are programmed by evolution to focus attention on dangers, for instance. Like if you walk in the African savannah 100,000 years ago, and you see a tree, and you see a bush, and you see a stone, and there is a snake, you're programmed, all attention on the snake.
Yeah.
Because if you miss the snake and you just look at the clouds, you're dead. So we are programmed, if something is a big danger, all attention is there. We cannot look away. Now, in the African savannah, you don't see a snake every moment. Maybe once in a week or in a month you see a snake. If you now open social media, it's snake, 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 snake. Because they discovered that to grab our attention, if they show us something that scares us, that makes us angry, we cannot take our eyes off it. And they deliberately, again, from all the contents that humans create, the algorithms discover, oh, this will make people angry. Good, we'll put it at the top of the newsfeed. And as a result, our media platforms, our information sphere, is being filled with hate and greed and fear, and this is destructive to our mental health, and this is destructive to society. We see it in democracies all over the world, that the conversation is breaking down. You know, in the United States, Republicans and Democrats are barely able to hold a rational conversation anymore, or to agree on the most basic facts, because of this flood of fake news and conspiracy theories. So we have the most sophisticated information technology in history, and people are losing the ability to hold a conversation.
So keeping this in mind, what do you think is the role of social media, that social media is playing in wars in Ukraine, for example, or even in the conflict in the West Bank, or even in the recent American election?
And social media is now the most important information platform in the world. You know, we have billions of people spending hours every day on these platforms. They define reality for us. Humans never react to reality. Humans always react to our image of reality. If this is reality, and this is the image of reality, we react to this. And social media is now shaping our image of reality more than anything else. This is a huge, huge responsibility. If you think about, 100 years ago, when the main media was newspapers, or radio, or later television. So some of the most powerful people in society were the editors. The editors of, say, TV news channels, that they decide what will be broadcast. They shape people's understanding of reality. And you see that some of the most powerful people in the 20th century, they began as editors. Lenin before he was dictator of the Soviet Union. He was editor of the newspaper Iskra. Mussolini began as a journalist, then he was editor of, I think, El Popolo d'Italia, and then he was dictator of Italy. So this was the kind of ladder of promotion: journalist, editor, dictator. Now, if you think, who are the editors of the most important platforms today? What are their names? They don't have names.
They don't have names.
Because they are not humans. They are AIs. And the editors of TikTok and Twitter and so forth, they are AIs. And they are increasingly controlling the human conversation, and through that, they are increasingly controlling society.
But you're an optimist. It's possible to create some balance because there are some positive things about AI, for example, in healthcare, for example. But is it possible to create this balance?
Yeah, I mean, I talk a lot about the negative side of AI because the companies talk enough about the positive side, but there is a positive side, absolutely. AI can provide us with the best healthcare in history. You know, we don't have enough doctors. It takes sometimes weeks or months to get a doctor's appointment. If we have millions of AI doctors that have read all the medical literature, that know our entire medical history, which no human doctor can do, this can be immensely beneficial. AIs can help in transport. You know, every year, more than 1 million people are killed in car accidents, most of them caused by human error, like somebody texting or looking at their smartphone instead of looking at the road. Self-driving vehicles will solve much of the problem. So AIs driving cars could save 1 million people every year. There is enormous positive potential. The question is how to... Nobody talks about, you know, stop all development of AI. This is not the aim. The aim is to regulate AI so that we can enjoy the benefits without suffering from the threats and the negative consequences, the same way we have regulated every previous technology. Like people invented cars, that's very good, but we have a regulation that cars need brakes, and cars need seatbelt, and cars need to be built in such a way, if there is an accident, the car doesn't explode, because there are protection for the fuel tank and things like that. Similarly with medicines. A pharmaceutical company that develops a new medicine cannot simply release it to the public. It has to make sure that it's safe, it has no dangerous side effects and so forth. We need the same thing for AI. And the most basic regulation of all is that companies should be liable, responsible for the actions of their algorithms. Not for the actions of the users, but for the actions of the algorithms. Again, I don't think Facebook or Twitter should be liable for what human users do. If a human user creates some hate-filled conspiracy theory and publishes it on Facebook, I don't think that's Facebook's responsibility. You should be very careful before you censor human beings. But if the Facebook algorithm, out of all the content created by humans, takes this conspiracy theory and puts it at the top of your newsfeed, this is on Facebook, and it should be responsible for the decisions of its algorithms.
But as citizens, we are also responsible for what happens. So what can a citizen do to create and to improve this balance?
First of all, organize. Humans, our superpower is our ability to cooperate in large numbers. 50 people in an organization can accomplish far, far more than 500 isolated individuals. So if something, you can't deal with all the problems of the world. You're just one person. So choose one issue which is close to your heart, and then find an organization, an institution that tries to deal with it and join it. If there is no organization, start an organization. But cooperation is the key. And this goes, of course, all the way up to political parties and elections. So be very mindful who you are voting for. And on the individual level, of course, our responsibility is more limited, but we still have some responsibility as individuals also. And here I would say that people need an information diet. The same way we have a food diet. We know too much food isn't good for us. Junk food isn't good for us. It makes us sick. It's the same with information. Too much information, especially junk information, makes us sick, makes the whole of society sick. We actually need more time to digest information than to put more in. If you just, all day, just consume more and more information, it's like all day you just eat. You never give your stomach time to digest it. So if you just keep putting more information in, your mind doesn't have time to digest, to think, to reflect, meditate, and this is very important. So we need an information diet, and we even need some periods of information fasts, that we don't eat more information, we just digest and detoxify.
Conselhos preciosos, história breve das redes de informação, nexos, autoria de Yuval Noah Harari. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Estas foram algumas de todas as palavras. Pode ver ou rever este e outros programas na plataforma RTP Play e na nossa página no Facebook. Regressamos na próxima semana. Boas leituras.